For 4 months she was right there, in the trunk, parked on a quiet street in the Hollywood Hills, then towed to an impound lot sitting in the summer heat. People walked past that car every single day. Neighbors complained about it. And nobody knew a 14-year-old girl was inside. The question isn't just who did this to her. It's how a body sits in the open for 4 months in one of the most watched cities in America, and everybody misses it. Stay with me, because the answer is worse than you think. If you are staying with us, take a second right now and hit subscribe so you don't miss where this goes next. And while you are here, tell us on the comment where in the world you are watching from. It matters to us to know how far this story have reached, and we read every single one. Let me take you back to the beginning of the end. September 8th, a Hollywood tow yard. Just a regular day, cars stacked up on the upper deck. Workers doing what workers do. But there was a smell coming off one of those vehicles. A black Tesla. And this wasn't your everyday funk. This was the kind of smell that turns your stomach and makes you back up before your brain even tells you why. Flies were on it. A lot of them. The kind of swarm that only shows up for one reason. The manager of that tow yard had had enough. That car had been sitting there 3 days already, and the thing was getting worse by the hour. So he called the police, told them there was a strong smell of decay coming off the vehicle, and it was pulling flies in from everywhere. Now here's where it gets real. Detectives from the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division rolled up to that tow yard, and the moment they got close to that Tesla, they knew. You don't need a degree to recognize that smell. One of them said it plain. It was decaying biological material consistent with a decomposing corpse, coming from the front of the car, not the back, the front. Because a Tesla, see, the engine's not up there. Up front, that's storage, a trunk. They call it a frunk. And whatever was inside had been inside long enough to announce itself to the whole yard. They got a warrant. They pulled on the black latex gloves, and they opened that front compartment. Inside was a black cadaver bag, an actual body bag, covered in insects, reeking. They unzipped it part way, and there it was, a decomposed head and torso. Let me tell you something. These are homicide detectives. They've seen things most of us will never have to see, and even they had to sit with this one. Because when they lifted that first bag out, they realized the arms and the legs weren't attached. Whoever this was had been taken apart. And then, underneath the first bag, there was a second bag. They opened that one too. That's where the rest of her was. 2 bags, 1 body, 1 human being, split up and stuffed into the front of a car like luggage. So now the detectives got a body, but they don't got a name. Not yet. And they don't got a whole lot else, because this body had been sitting so long that the evidence was already breaking down, decomposing, disappearing. Every day that passed, the truth got a little harder to reach, but they had one thing. They had the car, and a car has paperwork, a registration, a name on a title. The Tesla was registered out of Hempstead, Texas, and the name on it belonged to a 20-year-old man, a musician, somebody a whole lot of people already knew. But hold on, hold that thought, because before we get to him, you need to know her, because for months the whole world was going to be talking about whose car it was, and I think that's backwards. So let's do it right. Let's talk about the girl first. Her name was Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and she was 14 years old. She came up in Lake Elsinore, California, Riverside County. That's about 80 miles from the Hollywood Hills where they found her. A whole different world from the glitz of that city. Lake Elsinore is a regular place, regular families, folks who know each other, and a lot of them knew Celeste. Not because anything was wrong, because she was just around, a neighborhood kid. You want to know what people remember about her? The hair, big curly hair. One of her neighbors said she recognized Celeste anywhere because of it. Said she'd see the girl walking to school in the morning, backpack on her shoulders, just heading to class like any other kid in America. That's the image. Hold on to it. A young girl with a backpack and a head full of curls, walking to school. Her family said she loved to sing, loved to dance. In their own words, she was a beautiful, strong girl who loved to sing and dance. They had a little tradition in that house. Every Friday was movie night, all of them together. Her people said, "We spent wonderful times together." Said she always told them she loved them. That's a whole life right there. A kid with a family that saw her, that had rituals with her, that heard "I love you" from her. The owner of the corner store she used to visit, the little spot where neighborhood kids come through. He said after everything came out, "Everybody in the community is sad, not just the children." Said you could see it on anybody who walked in the door. That's the kind of girl she was to that town. The kind whose absence you could feel in a corner store. But here's the thing about Celeste, and I'm not going to dress this up because you deserve the whole picture. This wasn't the first time she'd disappeared. In the year before her body turned up in that trunk, Celeste had been reported missing. Not once, 3 times. The first time was Valentine's Day of 2024. February. Gone. Her family reported it, and then a few days later, she came back home. Now, the way one neighbor told it, Celeste wasn't even happy about the fuss. Came back and was upset about all the missing person flyers, all the posts online with her face on them. Like, she didn't want the attention, like she'd left on her own and didn't understand what the big deal was. Then March came around. March 19th, reported missing again, and again, she came back. And then April 5th, 2024, the 3rd time. Celeste was 13 years old at this point, sitting in the 7th grade. And this time, when she left, she didn't come back. Not really. There was reportedly one phone call home in May, and after that, silence. Her family didn't hear from her again. Now picture being that family. Your child has run before, so part of you thinks, okay, she'll turn up like she always does. But the days turn into weeks. The weeks turn into months. And that call in May is the last time you ever hear your baby's voice. So what do? You do everything. This family reportedly had meeting after meeting with the police. They went and pulled neighborhood surveillance footage themselves, scrubbing through it looking for her face. They begged neighbors, begged friends, anybody who might have seen something, anything. And here's a detail that's going to matter a whole lot later. Some folks in Lake Elsinore said they'd spotted Celeste around town even after she was reported missing. So she wasn't just vanishing into thin air. She was somewhere, coming and going. Her exact whereabouts in those final months, that stayed a mystery. But she was out there, living some kind of life nobody in that neighborhood could see all the way into. So the question that's got to be forming in your head right now is the same one that was forming in that family's home. Where was she? And who was she with? Well, her mama had a piece of that answer, and she'd had it for a while. Before Celeste disappeared that final time, her mother said the girl told her something, told her she had a boyfriend, and the boyfriend's name was David. That's it. That's what Mama had, a first name. Because, and let this sit with you, she said she never actually met him, never laid eyes on this David. Her teenage daughter had a boyfriend serious enough to mention by name, and the man never once showed his face to the family. Now let me ask you something, real talk. How you dating somebody, and your own mother never meets him? Not once. A boyfriend who stays in the shadows, who never comes to the door, who exists only as a name in a conversation? Moving on, but keep that name. David. Because there was a reason that man never wanted to be seen by Celeste's family. There was a reason he stayed a first name and a rumor, and that reason is where this whole story cracks wide open. So we left off with a name, David. The boyfriend Celeste's mama never met. Let me tell you who David was. His real name is David Anthony Burke, but the world didn't know him by that. The world knew him as d4vd. That's d4vd. And in 2025, this young man was not just somebody. He was somebody on the rise. His whole come-up started with a video game, Fortnite. Before any of the music, Burke was just a teenager making gaming content, putting Fortnite montages up on YouTube like a million other kids. That was the dream at first, just be a creator, be online, build something. But somewhere in there, he started making music, and in 2022, he dropped 2 songs that changed his life. One was called Here With Me. The other one, now, this is where it gets uncomfortable. The other one was called Romantic Homicide. Both of them went viral on TikTok, blew up. And just like that, the Fortnite kid was a music star. Over the next few years, he put out 2 EPs. He opened up for SEA on tour. He won 2 BMI Pop Awards. Real industry recognition. He collaborated with Kali Uchis and 21 Savage, names that carry weight. And then, in April of 2025, he released his debut album, called it Withered, and to top it all off, his song Locked and Loaded became the first official theme song for Fortnite, the same game that made him full circle. He said so himself, called it a true full circle moment, said Fortnite. Gave me a space to be creative and connect with people all over the world. So let's be clear about where this man was in life. 20 years old, debut album out, national tour selling out across the country, living up in the Hollywood Hills, his music inside one of the biggest video games on the planet. By every measure you could put on paper, David Anthony Burke was winning. Now let's go back to that song, Romantic Homicide, because once you know how this story ends, the words hit different. The hook goes, and I'm quoting it exactly, in the back of my mind, whoa, whoa, you died, whoa, whoa. And I didn't even cry. Whoa, whoa, no, not a single tear. And later he sings, in the back of my mind, I killed you, and I didn't even regret it. I can't believe I said it, but it's true. Do I love you? No, I hate you. That song has millions of streams. People dance to it, put it in their videos. And back when it first came out, somebody asked him what it meant. He sat down for a camera interview and explained it. Said the storytelling came from the lyrics that led up to the hook. Said, it builds up to the big moment where she died in the back of my mind. And then he said this, I didn't kill her physically, but in the back of my mind, she died. I didn't kill her physically. Hold that. Anyways, moving on, because the real question was never about a song. It was about how. How does a man like this, a rising star, 20 years old, end up connected to a 14-year-old girl from Lake Elsinore who's been missing since the 7th grade? And the answer that prosecutors would eventually lay out is the hardest part of this whole thing to hear. According to prosecutors, Celeste met David Burke in January of 2022. She was 11 years old. 11. He was already grown, a legal adult. Now, they didn't lay out every detail of how 2 people that far apart in age and life first crossed paths. But the timeline they built in court is the spine of this whole case. So I'm going to walk you through it the way they walked the judge through it. Because this didn't happen all at once. It happened over years. Slow. Prosecutors say the 2 of them started communicating in August of 2022. She's 11. And then, according to the people's own brief, The relationship began in November of 2023. Celeste was 13. Burke was 18. I'm going to say what needs to be said and keep it moving because this part doesn't need me dressing it up or dragging it out. A grown man in a relationship with a 13-year-old child, that's not a relationship. The law has a word for that, and prosecutors used it. Continuous abuse of a child under the age of 14. That's one of the charges he'd eventually face. I said what I said. Moving on. But you need to understand how tangled this got, because it explains so much of what happened later. Remember those 3 times Celeste went missing in 2024? Watch how Burke shows up in that story. February 17th, 2024, right in the middle of one of her disappearances. The Riverside County Sheriff's Department actually called him. See? They'd gone through her phone records, and his number was in there. So they called this man directly, and on that call, Burke told them he'd last spoken to Celeste around February 13th or 14th. But he claimed, and this is the part, he claimed he had no idea she was a minor, no idea she'd been reported missing. Then it happened again. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department went out to his home to do a welfare check, told him straight up, this girl is a 13-year-old runaway. And Burke, again, claimed he didn't know she was a minor. Said he'd only met her once in person back in November of 2023. But here's the thing that don't add up. During that welfare check, Burke pulled out his phone and showed the deputies a yearbook photo of Celeste. A yearbook photo. Make it make sense. You claim you barely know this girl. Met her one time, but you got her school yearbook picture saved in your phone? And you're showing it to the police? 2 days after that welfare check, Celeste returned home. For a little while. And what did Burke allegedly do after she got back home? Prosecutors say he drove out to Lake Elsinore, and he paid a junior high school student, a kid in Celeste's own class, $1,000. $1,000 to hand Celeste a cell phone that Burke had bought. Why? So the two of them could keep talking, off the radar, away from her family, away from anybody watching. So now the picture's coming together, ain't it? This is why David was never a face at the family's door. This is why he was just a name Mama heard once, because the whole thing was built to stay hidden, built on burner phones and secrets, and a girl who kept slipping away from home. Prosecutors say that through 2024, Celeste allegedly traveled with Burke. Las Vegas, London, Texas, spent summer weekends up at his Hollywood Hills home, and the text messages between them, the ones investigators would later pull, they weren't the texts of 2 kids with a crush. They referenced pregnancy plan B, the emergency contraceptive. When she was 13 and 14 years old, there was even a manager in Burke's orbit who'd allegedly gotten a warning. A private investigator said that back in 2024, concerned people sent an email to Burke's manager saying Celeste was missing and believed to be with d4vd. The manager later denied knowing anything about it, said he never got any emails, said he worked remotely and barely interacted with Burke day to day. But somebody, somewhere, was already trying to sound the alarm. And one day after that email was allegedly sent, Celeste went back home. Again. The pattern just kept repeating. Gone. Back. Gone. Back. Now, I want to bring up one detail, and I want you to really sit with it, because it's small, but it tells you everything about how deep this thing ran. The tattoos. When they identified Celeste's body, the medical examiner noted she had a tattoo on her right index finger. 2 little words. Shh. Like a secret. Like somebody telling you to be quiet. Her own mother confirmed it, said Celeste had that word tattooed on her right index finger in red ink. And then people started digging up old photos of d4vd. And in a picture from September 2024, there it was, on his right index finger, the same tattoo. Shh, same word, same finger. Two people, a grown man and a child, wearing the same secret on their hands. Like, what do you even call that? A matching tattoo is something couples do, something you do to say we belong to each other. And here it is, inked onto the finger of a 13-year-old girl and the man who'd been abusing her. A secret worn out in the open where nobody thought to look. Behinders me to this day that nobody put it together sooner. Neither Burke nor the authorities ever explained those tattoos. They didn't have to. Because by the time the world noticed them, Celeste was already gone, and the man with the matching ink was on tour, singing to sold-out crowds. But the relationship, if you can even call it that, it wasn't smooth. It was falling apart. And how it fell apart is what got Celeste killed. Because in March of 2025, 1 month before her life ended, Celeste sent him a text. And in it, she was pulling away, trying to get out. She wrote that they could be friends online, but she didn't want anything to do with him in person anymore. She wrote, and these are her words, "All we do is have sex and hang out, man. I want more for myself." She said, "I want more than just that." A 14-year-old girl trying to want more for herself, trying to get free. And his response to her wanting more? He allegedly wrote back, "Yeah, boundary setting is terrible. Let that be the last thing you hold on to before we get to that night." Because a month after Celeste said she wanted more for herself, she got into an Uber and she rode it straight to David Burke's house in the Hollywood Hills. She would never leave that house alive. April 23rd, 2025. The night everything ended. The day before, Celeste and Burke had gotten into it. A long argument, prosecutors say, over his relationships with other women. And Celeste, hurt, jealous, done. She made a threat. She said she'd expose him, told him she'd disclose damaging information about their relationship to end his career and destroy his life. And here's the timing that matters. His debut album was dropping in just a couple of days. Everything he'd built was right there, about to pay off. And this girl held the one secret that could burn it all down. So on the night of the 23rd, prosecutors say Burke called an Uber around 8:40 in the evening, sent it all the way out to Lake Elsinore to pick Celeste up from her parents' home. She got in that car, and around 10:10 she arrived at his place in the Hollywood Hills. Prosecutors say that very soon after she walked in that door, David Burke stabbed her multiple times, and then, in their words, he stood by while she bled out. She was 14 years old. Now watch what he allegedly did next, because this is where you see the calculation. At 10:30 that same night, with Celeste already gone, prosecutors say Burke started texting her phone, asking where she was. Then, around 11:30, he left the house and kept it up, texting, calling. "Where you at?" to a phone belonging to a girl he'd just killed. Prosecutors say this was all planned, a setup, building himself an alibi within a couple hours of the murder. He allegedly sent more texts the next day too, all of them going to a dead girl's phone. He allegedly stopped contacting her after April 26th, because what would be the point? That same night, prosecutors say he drove out toward Santa Barbara, trying to dump her belongings and destroy evidence. And here's one of the questions from the very top of this story. Months later, in January, a road worker found Celeste's passport lying in the grass on the shoulder of Highway 154 out in rural Santa Barbara County. Now, you know how it got there. Then he came back home the next morning, allegedly right before heading to a radio interview to promote the album. Business as usual, but he still had a body in his house. And what prosecutors say he did to solve that problem is the part I have to tell you plain, without dragging it out, because Celeste deserves that dignity. Over the following days, using the fake name Victoria Mendez, Burke allegedly went shopping online. Amazon, Home Depot. The list they read in court is a horror all by itself. A shovel, delivered the day after she died. 3 chainsaws. 2 cadaver bags, the brand literally called City Morgue, heavy-duty laundry bags, a mop and bucket combo, and a blue inflatable pool, the kind you'd put in a backyard for kids in the summer. Prosecutors say he used that pool to catch her blood so it wouldn't spill onto his garage floor. He even allegedly ordered a burn box, a little incinerator, as part of a plan to burn evidence down to nothing. Detectives later found it in his home, tucked behind a piano. They say he used a chainsaw to take her apart, and when investigators finally searched that garage, the blood told on him. It was on a rubber mat, a tarp, the Tesla charging plug, a rowing machine. DNA testing matched it to Celeste. Tiny blue fragments from that inflatable pool were found embedded in her remains. A physical match. She was in that garage. The evidence never left. And remember those matching tattoos? When they found Celeste, 2 of her fingers were gone, cut off. One of them was her ring finger, and prosecutors say that finger carried a tattoo of Burke's own name. They believe he amputated it to distance himself from her, to erase the proof that she'd belonged to him. Those fingers have never been found. Then he wrapped her in those 2 bags, put her in the front trunk of his Tesla, and left her there. Now, here's where your opening question finally gets its answer. How does a body sit in the open for 4 months and everybody misses it? Because that's exactly what happened. The Tesla got parked and abandoned in the Hollywood Hills. Neighbors noticed it sitting there. Complaints started as early as August. Burke, meanwhile, went on tour, living his dream across the country while Celeste rode along in the trunk. When investigators finally processed that car, they found something that'll stay with you. 11 air fresheners, stuffed throughout the vehicle, the console, the back seats, the trunk. 11, trying to cover a smell that no air freshener on earth was ever going to cover. The car got towed on September 5th, and 3 days later that tow yard manager made his call. 4 months. That's how long Celeste was gone before anybody knew where she'd been the whole time. Now here's the part that made people lose their minds. Even after they found her, it took 7 months to arrest him. Why? Because that body had decomposed so badly that the cause of death was hard to pin down. The medical examiner couldn't rule right away, and in November the LAPD went to a judge and got Celeste's autopsy sealed. Said releasing it could endanger witnesses and hurt the investigation. A grand jury started hearing evidence. All the while, a police source said something that still hangs over this case. They believed Burke most likely had help dismembering and disposing of the body. Help! But to this day, only one person has ever been arrested for what happened to Celeste. That arrest finally came in April 2026 in the Hollywood Hills, and the charges were staggering. First-degree murder with special circumstances, lying in wait, murder for financial gain, and murder of a witness. Because at the time she was killed, Celeste was a witness to a separate investigation into his abuse of her. Prosecutors said he killed her to protect that lucrative music career she'd threatened. On top of the murder, he was charged with continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14 and unlawful mutilation of human remains. The autopsy, finally unsealed, ruled it a homicide. She died from multiple penetrating injuries. Investigators said they found a significant amount of child sexual abuse material on his phone. David Burke pleaded not guilty. All of it. His attorneys came out firm, and I'll give you their words exactly. The actual evidence in this case will show that David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and he was not the cause of her death. They said they'd vigorously defend David's innocence. He sat through a preliminary hearing where they showed photographs of what was done to Celeste, and witnesses said he stared at those images without emotion. He is being held without bail, awaiting trial. Under the law, he has not been convicted of anything, and that trial is where this gets decided. But through all of it, Celeste's mother was in that courtroom, Mercedes Martinez, and when they put a passport photo of her daughter up on the screen, she broke down, had to leave the room saying, "Oh my God, and this is so hard." A mother looking at her child's face in a room full of the worst details imaginable. Her family laid her to rest in October, and her father, after the arrest, said just a few words. "Thank God, justice for Celeste." That's all a parent wants. Not a headline, not a viral case, just justice for their baby. In their own words, all we want is justice for Celeste. She was a girl with big curly hair who walked to school with her backpack, who loved to sing and dance, who had movie nights every Friday, who, at 14, texted a grown man that she wanted more for herself. She deserved to get it. She deserved to grow up. And the one thing we can still do is refuse to let her be just the body in the trunk. Her name was Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Say it. Remember it. And that's where we'll leave it tonight. If you made it all the way here with me, thank you for staying, and thank you for caring about Celeste enough to hear her whole story, not just the headline. This is Beyond Dark Cases, where we sit with the forgotten and the recent, the ones that still don't sit right, the questions that don't have clean answers. If this story moved you, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the algorithm buries these cases, and your click is what pulls them back into the light. Drop a comment and tell me where you land on this one. I read them. And whatever you do, take care of the young people around you. Watch who's in their orbit, because the quiet ones, the secrets, the boyfriend nobody's met, sometimes that's the whole story. Until the next one, stay safe, stay watching, and stay human.